In a small village, Tara stands in the marketplace, humiliated and tormented by the people she once called neighbors. For 10 long years she's endured gossip, mockery, and betrayal. All because of Jamal, the man she loved, who disappeared without a trace just days before their wedding. The village had written her off, calling her worthless, believing that Jamal had left because she wasn't good enough. But Tara knew something they didn't. She wasn't just waiting for him. She was waiting for the truth to reveal itself. This is the story of how patience, love, and truth fought against lies, deceit, and the cruelty of a village that never understood. If you are new to this channel, like, share and subscribe, and tell us where you are watching it from. Your support helps us tell more stories. Tara's life was a daily rhythm of hard work, dictated by the sun's rise and set. Each morning before the first light of dawn, she ventured to the village stream to fetch water. If she wasn't there early enough, the other women would pour the water out just to force her to fetch it again, a cruel game they played for their own amusement. Tara's resilience kept her steady in a village that offered little respect. At 27, unmarried, and living in a small mud house that once belonged to her late father, she had become the subject of whispered gossip. They called her useless, a woman whose value was only defined by the man who stayed with her. And when Jamal left, they saw her as nothing more than a forgotten shadow. Jamal had once been the pride of Hilltop Village, a bright, hard-working young man everyone admired. He had loved Tara deeply, quietly, in a way that echoed the steady flow of a river, consistent and unwavering. Their wedding had been planned, the entire village excited for the couple's union. But 3 days before the ceremony, Jamal vanished. No explanation, no goodbye, just an empty space where he had been. The village was left bewildered, and whispers spread like wildfire. Neka, a woman with a bitter heart, fueled the fire by spreading a malicious story. She claimed that Jamal had left because Tara was beneath him, that he had run away from her, and this became the narrative the village believed. For 10 long years, Tara endured the harsh judgment of those around her. She sold tomatoes at the market, earning just enough to get by. She mended clothes for people who always paid her late and worked the land, planting yams to sustain herself. Life was a constant struggle, but she never spoke out against the cruel gossip. The village mocked her, saying she was still waiting for Jamal, still holding on to a man who had abandoned her. What they didn't understand was that Tara wasn't waiting like a fool. She wasn't holding out for a man who would never return. No, Tara was waiting for something far more important, the truth. She kept 5 letters under her bed, each written in Jamal's familiar handwriting. The last one had arrived only 3 months ago, a reminder that he had never truly abandoned her. With each letter, Tara's hope remained alive. Every word in those letters was a promise, a thread connecting her to the man she had once loved. And though the village continued to mock her, Tara believed in something they couldn't see. That one day, Jamal would return and explain the mystery that had torn them apart. As she sat at her stall, selling tomatoes, she would glance at the letters she kept tucked away, knowing deep down that her patience was not in vain. One day, the truth would come, and when it did, the village would understand that Tara was never foolish. She had always known that love, patience, and truth would win in the end. Neka wasn't a random cruel person. Her cruelty had a method, a system. It wasn't enough for her to hurt Tara once or twice. Neka found joy in making sure the pain was relentless, spreading it out over days, weeks, and years. Every Monday, without fail, she would make sure Tara felt the weight of her cruelty. As soon as Tara arrived at the market with her tomatoes, Neka would announce loudly enough for everyone to hear, "The abandoned woman is here. Make way for the woman Jamal left behind." The other market women would laugh. Some of them did so awkwardly, their eyes darting away, while others laughed shamelessly, as if Tara weren't a person at all. To them she was just a joke. But Neka didn't stop there. She enjoyed watching Tara squirm, enjoyed seeing the pity and scorn in the eyes of others. She made sure that no one showed Tara any kindness, and every week, she would go out of her way to remind the village of her suffering. On Wednesdays it was church. Tara went, as she always did, to seek some peace and solace. But no peace ever came. Every week, Nneka made sure to position herself in a way that would force Tara to sit alone. Tara would quietly sit on the bench, surrounded by empty space, while the other women would whisper and glance in her direction. They wouldn't even look at her, let alone speak to her. The isolation was suffocating, and yet, Tara never uttered a word in protest. She simply sat, keeping her eyes low, her mind focused on the prayer that she knew would give her some small reprieve from the cruelty that surrounded her. Sundays were the hardest days of all. After church service, the women would gather under the large mango tree in the village square. They would talk, laugh, share food, and be together, creating a bond that Tara had long been excluded from. Tara would stand at the edge of the group, her small plate in hand, eating alone while the laughter of togetherness drifted past her like smoke she could never catch. She watched the women, but they never invited her in, never saw her as one of them. Instead, she was a reminder of something broken, something unwanted. Tara didn't understand why they excluded her, but she knew it was because of Jamal, because they believed he had abandoned her. Why didn't she leave? That was the question people asked when they bothered to speak to her at all. Tara had a distant uncle in the city, people knew that. She could have gone to him, started over, built a new life away from the whispers, away from Nneka's cruelty. But she didn't. Every time someone mentioned it, Tara would give a small, quiet smile and say, "This is my father's house. I am not the one who should leave." To the village, it sounded like stubbornness, like pride, maybe even foolishness. But Tara wasn't proud, and she wasn't foolish. What they couldn't understand was that Tara had a quiet strength, a belief in something greater than what they could see. She believed in something beyond the scorn and mockery. She wasn't leaving because she knew something they didn't. She knew her father's house was her inheritance, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that from her. Not even Nneka. Nneka's hatred for Tara wasn't just because of Jamal's departure. There was something more. Years before, Nneka's son, Obi, had wanted to marry Tara. But Tara had kindly, firmly refused him. She had seen something in Obi that made her unwilling to give him her heart. It wasn't that he wasn't a good man. He simply wasn't the one for her. Some people in the village said that's where the real hatred began, that Jamal's disappearance was just the excuse Nneka needed to take out her anger on Tara for rejecting her son. But Tara saw something else in Nneka's eyes. It wasn't just hatred, there was something deeper, something that had been hidden for years. Fear. Fear of something Tara couldn't quite understand, but it was there, lurking beneath the surface. Fear of what? Tara couldn't know for sure, but she could feel it every time Nneka looked at her, as though there was something more to the story, something more than just Jamal leaving. It was as if Nneka feared Tara's strength, her patience, and the quiet way she carried herself despite the cruelty. And so, Nneka continued her torment, week after week, never realizing that Tara's silence was not weakness, but a strength she could never hope to break. One Tuesday morning, the village of Hilltop was stirred by the arrival of something unusual. A sleek black car rolled slowly down the narrow dirt roads, its polished surface gleaming in the early morning sun. The man who stepped out was clearly not from Hilltop. His shoes, too clean for the dusty roads, and his crisp, immaculate shirt suggested he didn't belong in a village where even the wealthier people wore worn, faded clothes. He carried a brown envelope, small and unmarked, but its contents clearly meant something important. He stopped in front of a small group of children, asking for directions to Tara's house. Word spread quickly, as it always did in the village. Before long, half of Hilltop had gathered, drawn by the sight of the mysterious stranger. Nneka, who was always quick to watch for any opportunity to make trouble, stood at her window, her eyes narrowing as she observed the newcomer. It was as if she were trying to read the stranger's every move, trying to piece together some hidden message from the way he stood, the way he held the envelope. Her thoughts raced, but her face remained unreadable, just like the stranger's. He was an enigma in a village that loved gossip. When the stranger reached Tara's house, the whole village seemed to pause. Tara opened the door calmly, her expression serene. No shock on her face, no flutter of panic. She wasn't surprised to see him, as though she had been expecting this moment for years. "You're from Jamal," she said softly, not a question, but a quiet statement of certainty. The stranger's eyes flickered for a moment, and then a small smile curved his lips. "Yes," he replied. "He said you would know." He introduced himself as Victor, though Tara didn't need an introduction. She knew, without a doubt, that this moment was tied to Jamal. Without opening the brown envelope, Victor placed it on the table between them. He told her that Jamal was well, that he had been thinking of her all these years. But there was more. Victor spoke of 3 things, 3 key pieces of information that, when revealed, made Tara's heart skip a beat. The first was an explanation for Jamal's disappearance, a truth that Tara had long suspected but never fully understood. He had been shown a forged document, a fake legal paper, that had convinced him he needed to leave for her safety. The second piece of the story was that Jamal had never stopped loving her, and though he had been lost in the city for years, he had never let go of the hope of returning. The third and final revelation was the reason why Jamal had stayed silent all this time. He had been gathering evidence, searching for the right moment to return, and now, finally, he was ready. Tara felt the weight she had carried for so many years lift, and in that moment, she closed her eyes and let out a deep, slow breath. It was as if the world had shifted, and everything she had endured for so long was finally making sense. Victor left quietly, but before he did, he shared one more detail that sent a chill down Tara's spine. "I made a wrong turn," he said. "I stopped in front of Neka's house by mistake, just for a moment." Tara's mind raced as she processed this unexpected detail. The stranger hadn't mentioned anything else, but she knew, deep in her bones, that this was no mere coincidence. Neka, who had tormented her for years, had somehow become part of a larger story. What did it mean? Tara couldn't quite grasp it yet, but she knew this would change everything. That night, the village could not sleep. Word spread like wildfire, and by dusk, rumors were already swirling in every corner of Hilltop. Jamal was coming back. But was he coming with wealth? With anger? Would he seek revenge on those who had abandoned and humiliated Tara? No one knew for sure, but the entire village buzzed with excitement and fear. The questions were endless, and the answers were nowhere to be found. The air was thick with anticipation, and Tara could feel it too, the storm that was about to break over Hilltop. Her heart raced with both excitement and dread. Jamal was coming back, and this time everything would change. The next day at the market, the air was thick with anticipation. The entire village seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. No one knew exactly what that something was, but the tension was palpable. Tara had spent 10 long years enduring the ridicule and scorn of the village, all because of Jamal's sudden disappearance and the cruel lies that followed. She had endured in silence, her patience and strength becoming the foundation of her resilience. But today things were different. Today, Tara was ready to stand up for herself, for the truth that had been buried for far too long. As usual, Neka arrived at the market early, eager to humiliate Tara. She positioned herself at the entrance, her sharp eyes scanning the area, looking for an opportunity to unleash her usual insults. As Tara walked in with her tomatoes, Neka wasted no time in making her announcement loud and clear for everyone to hear. "The abandoned woman is here. Make way for the woman Jamal left behind." Neka's voice rang through the market, a venomous smile spreading across her face as she basked in the attention of the crowd. But this time Tara didn't flinch. She didn't shrink back or lower her head in shame. Instead, she stood tall, her voice calm but carrying through the hushed market. "I've been patient with you for 10 years, Tara said, her eyes locking with Neka's. "But I think we're near the end now. So I want you to rest. Save your energy. You'll need it soon." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. The entire market went still. The women who had been laughing at Tara just moments before fell silent. Neka opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Her eyes flashed with a mix of confusion and unease. She had never expected Tara to speak like this, to confront her so directly. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the ground beneath Nneka was shifting. Tara's words had struck a nerve, but Nneka had no response, nothing that could counter the quiet strength in Tara's voice. Without another word, Nneka turned and walked away, her steps heavy and reluctant. The crowd watched as she left, and for the first time in years, Tara felt the weight of the village's judgment lift from her shoulders. She had finally said what needed to be said. She had stood her ground. That afternoon, after the market had emptied and the village returned to its usual quiet rhythm, Tara returned home. She sat on the edge of her bed, her heart still racing from the confrontation. But she knew it wasn't over. Not yet. It was time to face the truth. Tara opened the small tin box beneath her bed, the box that had held her memories and her heart for the last 12 years. Inside were 5 letters, each written by Jamal during his time away. The first one had arrived so many years ago, filled with raw emotion and shock. She ran her fingers over the edges of the envelope before slowly opening it, allowing herself to relive the pain and the love that had been sealed inside. The first letter was short, written in a hurried, almost frantic hand. Jamal explained that 3 days before their wedding, he had been shown a forged document, one that claimed Tara's life would be in danger if they married. It was a lie, a carefully crafted lie that had been designed to tear them apart. He had been afraid. He had believed the threat. And so, he had left, thinking he was protecting her. The letter also revealed something Tara had never known, that Jamal had never stopped loving her. Despite the distance, despite the pain, he had carried her in his heart every day. And when he left, he hadn't abandoned her. He had believed the lies, but he had never stopped searching for the truth. Tara's hands trembled as she read the words, each one more painful than the last. Jamal had been afraid, just as she had been afraid when he left. But the truth, the real truth, was far more painful than the lies they had both believed. For 12 long years, Jamal had been gathering evidence, carefully piecing together the truth that had been hidden from them both. He had found the forged documents, tracked down the people responsible for the lies, and slowly built a case that would prove the corruption and deceit that had torn them apart. And now it was time. Jamal was ready to return. He was ready to confront the people who had betrayed him, and to make things right. Tara closed her eyes, letting the tears fall freely now. She had known deep down that Jamal hadn't abandoned her. She had known that one day the truth would come. But to finally have it in her hands, to read his words and understand the depth of his love and sacrifice, it was more than she could have ever hoped for. She had waited for 10 years, not for Jamal to return, but for the truth to be revealed. And now that it was, Tara knew that the end was finally near. The lies that had bound her to the past were about to be shattered. And when Jamal returned, the truth would be set free. Sunday morning arrived like no other, the golden light of dawn breaking through the trees, signaling that something monumental was about to unfold in Hilltop Village. The air was thick with anticipation, and the village buzzed with rumors and whispers, each person speculating about Jamal's return. But no one could have predicted what they were about to witness. Jamal's arrival was unlike any other. The boy who had left so many years ago had returned as a man, taller, more confident, and carrying with him an aura of authority that demanded respect. He stepped out of a sleek car, and behind him, a government official followed, along with 2 men carrying large boxes filled with documents. The sight of the official and the boxes immediately silenced the crowd. The villagers stood in awe, uncertain of what was unfolding before them. The truth that had been hidden for years was finally about to come to light. Jamal walked steadily to the village square, his presence undeniable. Tara stood off to the side, her heart pounding in her chest as she watched him. She knew that the moment she had been waiting for had arrived. This wasn't just about Jamal returning. It was about everything that had been stolen from them, their love, their family's land, and the truth that had been buried under lies for far too long. Jamal stood before the gathered villagers and began to speak, his voice clear and unwavering. He opened the boxes, revealing the documents, contracts, signatures, and confessions that laid bare the corruption that had stolen his family's land. Nneka and Papa Roland's lies were exposed for all to see. The land that had once belonged to Jamal's family, the land his father had carefully registered and preserved, had been taken from them through deceit and manipulation. The documents proved it all. There was no hiding the truth anymore. The lies that had plagued Tara and her family were finally stripped away, and those responsible had no choice but to face the consequences of their actions. Nneka and Papa Roland stood in silence, the weight of their guilt crashing down on them as the village looked on. But for Tara, it wasn't the documents that mattered most. It was Jamal. As he turned toward her, his eyes filled with an emotion she hadn't seen in years, regret, love, and sorrow all intertwined. He walked toward her, and in front of the entire village, he said the words Tara had longed to hear. "I'm sorry it took so long," he said, his voice soft yet filled with sincerity. Tara's heart swelled, and without hesitation she whispered back, "You came back." And that was all that mattered. In that moment the years of waiting, of pain, and of loneliness melted away. The truth had come, and Jamal had returned. 6 weeks later, under the very mango tree where she had once been excluded, Tara and Jamal were married. The village gathered around them, some with joy, others with shame, but all bearing witness to a love that had withstood the test of time and cruelty. Tara wore gold, the radiant symbol of her strength, and as they exchanged vows, the weight of the past finally lifted. The truth had waited. Tara had waited. And in the end, the lies were exposed, and the strength of her patience had proven to be her greatest power. The people who had once called her useless now saw the woman they had mocked for so long was the strongest of them all. Tara had endured 10 years of shame, not because she was worthless, but because she knew deep down that the truth would come. And when it did, she would stand tall, unshaken. If you are new to this channel, like and subscribe.